Hello and welcome to Distraction. I'm your host, Dr. Ned Hallowell. I'll be answering in today's session your questions and responding to emails we've received recently from many of you. Remember, if you have a question you'd like me to answer, please send it to connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's connect@distractionpodcast.com. We love these Q&A sessions, and of course we can't have them without your questions. So off we go to the races. Let's get started. My wonderful producer, the inimitable Sarah Guertin, is joining me now to read your questions to me as well as your comments. And so let me ask Sarah, the wonderful, wonderful Sarah, who are we starting with today?
Hi, Ned. Today, we are starting with an email from a listener named Tim. Tim wrote to us in response to the episode we released about an ADHD diagnosis being good news. And he wrote, "Hi, Dr. Hallowell. I haven't technically received a diagnosis of ADHD, but the process wasn't good news for me. After struggling and underperforming through grade school, community college, and university, finally earning my bachelor's degree 6 years after graduating high school, I finally had myself tested for ADHD when I was put on academic probation after my first semester in grad school. I was told that I was one self-reported symptom short of a diagnosis of ADHD. They found that I had a good IQ, but my working memory and processing speed scores were 3 standard deviations below my other scores. My university was unwilling to allow me any accommodations, and the representative told me that, quote, no one was going to feel sorry for me if I was able to get a bachelor's degree, end quote. I later worked with a psychiatrist that allowed me to give ADHD medications a try, but they didn't seem to help me. This was around 2003, and they had unpleasant side effects. A few years later, I tried treating my dysthymia pharmacologically, and that didn't seem to help either. I've worked with a few different therapists over the years and have made only a little progress on that. I currently take dextroamphetamine because of daytime sleepiness associated with insomnia and sleep apnea that is not treated well by APAP/CPAP. The dextroamphetamine sort of helps the attention piece a little, but also makes me more distracted in other ways. Anyways, the point is that the news isn't always good, but maybe that is just because I didn't get a clear ADHD, in parentheses, vast diagnosis. Take care, Tim.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. For people listening, VAST is the term that John Rady and I came up with in our new book for ADHD because ADHD itself is so inaccurate. VAST stands for Variable Attention Stimulus Trait. And Tim, yes, what you suffered is not good news. What you've suffered is terrible news, and it reflects both how difficult it can be to have ADHD or VAST, but also how hard it is to get competent help. I mean, the idea that you were, one self-reported symptom short of a diagnosis is ridiculous. It's like my friend and colleague John Rady kids, if you're one symptom short of a diagnosis of depression, what does that mean? You're just miserable? I mean, these diagnostic criteria are not supposed to be, taken that literally. So it's hard and fast. If you have 5 symptoms, you don't have it. If you have 6 symptoms, you do. Technically, that's the definition. But a true evaluation, a good evaluation, is based on the totality of your presentation. What are you struggling with, and how long have you been struggling with it, and how intense is it? And these are not amenable to being so concrete that you say, well, you have 5 symptoms, you don't have it. You have 6 symptoms, you do have it. That's just not right. And you were suffering, and you were not given any help. And the idea that no one was going to feel sorry for me if I was able to get a bachelor's degree, that's also absurd. There are plenty of high achievers who have ADHD. I have any number of physicians in my practice. There is a Nobel Prize winner who has ADHD. You can be a CEO, a self-made millionaire or billionaire and have this condition. So the fact that you were able to get a bachelor's degree, doesn't mean you don't have ADHD. Again, we're dealing with misconceptions, and it breaks my heart to see how hard you've been trying, which is also typical of folks who have ADHD not getting the right help, in fact, getting wrong help. And I don't know about the medications that you were given, but if my guess is right, you weren't given sort of the full range of possibilities vis-a-vis medication. Now, medication does not always work. It does work about 80% of the time. And by work, I mean you get target symptom improvement, improved efficiency, improved focus, improved performance, with no side effects other than appetite suppression without weight loss. In my own case, meds don't work. I'm one of the 20% for whom meds don't work. But I have found a medication that I like, namely coffee. So I have my coffee every day, and that's my version of stimulant medication. I think, if you were to work with a psychiatrist who really understood the condition, and if you were given help beyond simply try this medication, if you were given some education, some coaching, so you could have a fuller understanding of what your strengths and vulnerabilities are, then you could maximize the strengths and minimize the vulnerabilities. But you need to find somebody who really gets this. I refer you to my book, Delivered from Distraction. And if you read that, you'll know enough to be able to actually teach whoever you go to see. And you'll know what the various meds are, but also what are the non-medication interventions that are available. And there are many of them. We've talked on this program before about the Zing program. And if you want to learn about that, go to distraction.zingperformance.com, ZING performance.com. And it's just a series of physical exercises that stimulate the cerebellum, which in turn is connected to the frontal part of the brain where the action is in ADHD. My buddy John Rady has written a whole book about how physical exercise, just exercise in general, can help with ADHD. And we know also that meditation can help. I'm a big fan of promoting finding some creative outlet, something where you can use your imagination to create, build, or develop something. That's something that the reason I write so many books, I'm starting my 21st book, is not because I'm ambitious to write books. It's because if I don't have a book going, I get depressed. I need a creative outlet to keep me going. So long-winded, but yes, this condition undealt with can be horrible. But if you find someone who can guide you to deal with it properly, you can tap into your superpower. You can tap into your unique talents and your special your special abilities, which we all have. It's just it can take some doing, some scratching, some probing, some trying, and failing to find what are your special talents and abilities. Tim, don't give up. It's not like people with ADD to give up, but I'm sorry you had that negative experience. I'm sorry you've had the bad news side of ADHD. Let's see if you can get some help and get to the good news part of it. Thanks so much for writing in. Sarah, do we have another one?
We sure do. And actually, it ties into what you were just saying.
Mm-hmm.
This one is about changing careers from a listener named Sarah. Mm-hmm. She asks, can you do a podcast about ADHDers who want to change fields or careers? I have tried to switch a few times with no success. I have never been, quote, happy in a job. I have an enormous amount of student debt to pay off, which weighs on me every single day of my life. I would like to find something I can be happy doing day in and day out. Like you, Dr. Hallowell, I'm a writer at heart, and I am depressed when I don't have a creative outlet. My husband has even said, quote, you are so much happier when you write. With 3 school-aged kids, it's very hard to find the time for all the things to keep us healthy, exercise, cooking, etc., and sane. I'm not a novelist yet. How do you find the time?
Well, Sarah, I, as one writer to another, my heart goes out to you. I mean, you've got to make money, and it's very hard to make money as a writer. So for now, I would put the writing under the category of hobby, avocation. It's probably not going to pay you what you need to make right off the bat. So you want to find a job that is at the intersection of 3 circles. One circle are things you really like to do. The other circle are things that you're very good at doing. And the third circle are things that someone will pay you to do. So where those three circles overlap, what I call your sweet spot, that's where you ought to be spending as much of your time as you possibly can. So you just sit down at the kitchen table with your husband, because we're not good self-observers. We so often sell ourselves short. And make a list. What do I like to do? And then another list, what am I good at doing? And see where those two lists overlap. And then the third one, okay, given these overlaps, which one of them will pay enough to, make it worth my while, worth the time I put in? And I know you can find probably a few things in there where you can try to get a job in that overlap in your sweet spot. And then for the writing, I would recommend it's a very short book, and I can't remember the author's name, but it's Now is the Year You Write Your Novel. It's a very short book, and it's very practical. It's written by a man who's written like 20 books, so he knows what he's talking about. And I'm just going onto my cell phone to see if I can find the actual, here we go. This Year You Write Your Novel, okay? And the author is Walter Mosley, Mosley. It's in paperback. It sells for $15.99. And I can tell you it's money well spent for you. This Year You Write Your Novel. And basically, what he recommends is that you write for an hour a day. Now, you may not be able to find an hour a day, so I think he'd approve if you put in a half an hour a day. But that's how you do it. You find the time, you create the time, and then you protect that time religiously. And it gets so you really look forward to it. And even if you spend the half hour staring out the window, you've committed to doing it. And since you're a writer at heart, and I love your phrase, I'm a writer at heart, and depressed when you don't write, you got to write. And just don't think that it's going to pay your bills right off the bat. Now, the day may come when it does pay your bills. One of the main reasons I went to medical school is I didn't want to put all my financial eggs in the basket of becoming a successful writer. And it took me a while before my books started paying me, but now they do, and they've helped me put my kids through college, and I've achieved my dream of. But my primary job is being a doctor, is helping people, and I specialize, as you know, in this condition, ADHD. Terrible name, but that's what they call it. So I hope this answer helps. Try to find a job that's in your sweet spot, the overlap of what you're good at, what you like to do, and what someone will pay you to do. And then have your writing, don't give up on it. Absolutely have it. Commit to it at least a half hour a day, ideally an hour a day, and get Walter Mosley's book, This Year You Write Your Novel. And I want you to come back to me, please, and let me know how you did with this. Congratulations, Sarah. Don't give up on your dream. All right. This next question comes from Kristen. Sarah, you want to read it?
Sure. She writes, "Hi, Dr. Hallowell. My son is moderately gifted, IQ approximately 135, so nothing profound. I would think he hits about 6 to 7 check marks for inattentive ADHD. It does definitely affect him at home and at school. He gets pretty stressed about writing, prioritizing, organizing, planning, ignoring distractions, etc. But because he is gifted, he seems pretty average to the teachers, just seems to, quote, need a bit of help to stay on task. He is going into grade 5 in Canada, but he does like school, so that's good. He does have some success there, thank goodness. He is accelerated by 1 grade for math. At home, he has a hard time following more than 2-step directions, forgets what he was going to do, avoids hard stuff, emotional regulation is difficult and can be quite extreme, etc. Basically, I am on the verge of considering medication. I will see how this year goes. I just wonder if these struggles are holding him back from his potential." Kristen notes that her son has had an assessment and that he scored well on all tests, including working memory, but he was in the clinical range for visual, attention, and visuomotor processing.
Good job with that visuomotor pronunciation.
I looked it
Sarah.
up.
That's visuomotor. Well, okay. Kristen, 135 is more than moderately gifted. IQ approximately 135, so nothing profound. That's profound. 135 is real good, and it's in certainly the top 1 or 2%. So I think he is indeed, at least on the basis of IQ, a gifted kid. You said in your letter, basically, I am on the verge of considering medication. That makes it sound like it's some kind of last-ditch intervention. Medication used properly is very safe and very effective. And putting it off, it's sort of like saying, why don't I do a year or two of squinting before I get eyeglasses? Medication is proven to be effective in 80% of cases. And effective means you get results and you don't have side effects. 20% it doesn't work, but 80% is a pretty good batting average. And it makes no sense to defer, hoping that the non-medication interventions will take care of it, because the non-medication interventions become far more effective if the person is on medication that works. In other words, you can do all the coaching and organizing and planning that are part of the non-medication interventions far more effectively if you're taking a medication that is helping you. So I would absolutely get my doctor to give my son a trial of Ritalin or Adderall, whichever he or she likes to prescribe, and make the trial, involved enough so that you don't just try one dose of one medication. You try various doses of one from the amphetamine category and one from the methylphenidate category. The holding off on medication is real common. People have a tendency to think of it as an extreme intervention, and it isn't. It's not surgery. It's not last ditch when all else has failed. Unfortunately, that's the way a lot of people approach it. If they approached it more like, okay, let's get the proven intervention, namely medication, and then do all the rest, you'd get much better results with a lot less heartache and struggle. People talk about the side effects of medication, and all those side effects can be controlled simply by lowering the dose, changing the medication, or discontinuing it altogether. But what they really ought to talk about are the side effects of not taking the medication. Year after year after year of underachievement, of frustration, of knowing you could be doing better. If only you could get the mental eyeglasses that medication can provide. So I hope you'll give that some thought. And please do get back to us. We love to get follow-up emails from these calls. Okay, Miss Sarah, do we have another one in our mailbag?
We certainly do. We have lots of parents this week. You can tell it's back to school time. But This next email comes from Lisa, who is the mother of a 12-year-old girl in the 7th grade. Her daughter was diagnosed with ADHD in the 2nd grade, but didn't start medication until 5th grade. She writes, please share more on the psychiatry of ADHD, medications, and interaction with the brain. My very specific question is about why a 10 milligram methylphenidate seems to be more effective than the fancy slow-release Concerta. What are the risks of me sending methylphenidate to school for my immature 12-year-old to take at lunch hour? And she put in parentheses, I heard kids sell them. Thank you again for all you do to help me learn to be the best mom I can for my challenging child, Lisa.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for writing in. 12-year-old girl in the 7th grade. You got the diagnosis in the 2nd grade, but didn't start medication until the 5th grade. That's sort of in keeping with the previous call. There's a tendency to put off starting medication, which, again, I don't think makes much sense. Everyone does it, so don't feel bad. Everyone thinks of medication as this last-ditch intervention, but it really isn't. It's a first-ditch intervention. And at least I think it ought to be, because there's very little downside. If the meds work right away, and if you don't like what they do, you stop it. I mean, that's only common sense. And if you do like what it does, you say, hooray, and you continue it. And that whole process can take a week. You can really find out pretty quickly if the meds are going to be helpful or not. Sometimes more than a week, maybe a month. But it is a process of trial and error. Now, in your specific question, why does 10 milligrams of methylphenidate seem more effective than Concerta, which is a slow-release medication? the short answer is we don't know, but specifically with Concerta, it may very well be, if you're taking the generic Concerta, that the osmotic pump, the generic manufacturer didn't get it right. Concerta was the first long-acting medication we had, and when it went generic, all of a sudden people were saying, my Concerta doesn't work anymore. And that's because the osmotic pump, which was developed at MIT and allowed for the medication to be slow release, a lot of the generic manufacturers didn't get it right. They didn't know how to technologically reproduce the original Concerta. So all of a sudden, people were getting different generic formulations that suddenly didn't work. So that could be why. Now, there are other slow release forms of methylphenidate. There's Ritalin LA, for example. LA stands for long-acting. And if you want a long-acting formulation, I would suggest giving that a try, or trying a different generic of Concerta, or trying brand name Concerta. Because there's a distinct advantage to not having to bring your medication to school. Most schools will not allow kids to bring it in for one of the reasons being you already cited, that some kids sell their medication, some kids lose it, some kids pass it around to friends just to see what it does. You know how kids are with experimentation. That's dangerous. You don't want to be doing that. So I would not have my son or daughter bring their medication in their pocket to school. What schools do is you can give it to the school nurse, and she can dispense the medication. Now, that's inconvenient. The child has to go to the school nurse at recess or lunchtime, and, a lot of people don't want to do that. So I think it's worth it for you to hunt down a long-acting methylphenidate that does work. And don't forget, if you don't find a methylphenidate, there's always amphetamine, Adderall or Vyvanse, the long-acting version, Adderall XR, extended release, or Vyvanse. What can you do to be the best mom you can be? Learn all you can about ADHD. My most recent book is Delivered from Distraction. There's a ton of information in there. Super Parenting for ADD is another book that is worth it. And there are many others out there by many other authors. This field has become richly written about, which is great. And you might subscribe to the wonderful magazine Attitude. That's ADDITUDE. Terrific magazine full of really good articles every month that it comes out. I hope this answers your questions. I'm just looking back and trying to see. I think I addressed it. But the main thing you can do for your daughter is to love her, which you're already doing. And sorry about that. My cell phone just went off. They tell me, the producer always tells me to turn off my cell phone. And, of course, I forget. And so then I will get my wrist slapped during the break for not turning off my cell phone.
Everyone knows your ringtone.
Anyway, I'm sorry for that interruption. But, so there's methylphenidate and there's amphetamine. Those are the two molecules that comprise the bulk of the stimulant medications that we use to treat this condition. And it is a matter of trial and error. You can't predict which one will work best for any given child. But it's worth trying a few before you give up at different doses and different formulations. And as I said, the best thing you can do for her is love her, and you know that. And provide structure, provide a routine, provide what her brain usually doesn't do so very easily. And, make her feel proud of having it. The more successes she experiences, the more she feels proud of having the imagination I'm pretty sure she's got, having the kind of spontaneity, the kind of humor, all her quirkiness make her feel proud of, because she should be proud of it. We need this in today's world. These are the people that make the changes that bring us what we're hoping for. Anyway, Lisa, thanks so much for writing in. Please give us follow-up. We love hearing about what happens to the people that our listeners write in about. I want to tell you about Landmark College in beautiful Putney, Vermont. It is the best college in the world for students who learn differently, with ADHD, for other learning differences, or autism spectrum disorder. It's fully accredited, not-for-profit, offering bachelor's and associate degrees, bridge programs, online dual enrollment courses for high school students, and summer programs. They use a strength-based model at Landmark, which, as you know, is the model that I certainly have developed and subscribed to give students the skills and strategies they need to achieve their goals in life and really expand upon what they believe they're capable of doing. It is just a wonderful, wonderful place, and I can't say enough good about it. I myself have an honorary degree from Landmark College, of which I am very proud. Landmark College in Putney, Vermont is the college of choice for students who learn differently. To learn more, go to lcdistraction.org. That's lcdistraction.org. Okay, let's get back to today's topic. So, do we have another email?
We have a couple more here. This next one comes from Trisha, and she writes, I enjoy listening to your podcast to help me learn more about how I can help my 11-year-old son use his ADHD superpowers. I have read your Driven to Distraction book as well. Where we struggle is explaining his brain to the grandparents that don't see him on a day-to-day basis to know how to deal with or understand his behaviors. They are used to the other grandkids that are very organized and even keel with their emotions. Do you know of a concise general resource that we could point them to so they can better understand and appreciate his unique brain?
Well, this is common. Grandparents and, people who didn't grow up with ADD as sort of part of the lexicon often get kind of grumpy about it and say, what is this nonsense? All he needs is more discipline. And that's simply wrong. It's understandable because they don't know what they don't know, but they need to know what they need to know. Now, it's hard to educate your parents. And as people get older and more fixed in their ways, they become less open to hearing the truth. So how do you present to them the truth? Sometimes you can't do it as their child. So sometimes you rely on a book. And the book I would give them would be not Driven to Distraction, but Delivered from Distraction, because it has newer stuff in it. And the first chapter is called The Skinny. Read this if you can't read the whole book. So get them to read, the highlights. Now, if they're willing to listen to you, and if you've read it, just explain to them. Keep it simple. The analogy that I like best is the one that I use most often. Having this condition is like having a Ferrari engine for a brain, but with bicycle brakes. So, it's not hard to understand that analogy. You've got a powerful, powerful brain, a powerful imagination. Your challenge is in controlling it. It's not easy to control the power of the brain that you've got. So you need help in strengthening your brakes. That's a pretty good analogy, and the grandparents should be able to understand that. And the way to strengthen your brakes is not to punish or shame the child. In fact, that's the worst thing you can do, but to support and give structure. And when they screw up, say your brakes failed you. You see, because that's not shaming. There's no shame in my brakes failed me. It's a mechanical problem. So I got to work on my brakes. Okay, now how do I do that? Well, I exercise. Maybe I take medication. Maybe I practice more. Maybe I work with a coach or some teacher. Maybe I get extra help. All these are ways of, maybe I eat right, get enough sleep, not too many video games. These are all ways of strengthening my brakes. And if grandma and grandpa can reinforce that, then that's so much better than undermining it with grumpy remarks about all he needs or she needs is more discipline. Telling someone with ADD to try harder or get more discipline is about as helpful as telling someone who's nearsighted to squint harder. It's antediluvian. It misses the biological science, the point. And even though we live in an age that people are not always receptive to science, we ought to be, because science means knowledge, and knowledge is powerful. Lack of knowledge, on the other hand, is hugely destructive. So try to go with knowledge and science, and try to help your parents help their grandchildren. Grandparents are the greatest blessing next to dogs God ever created. And so let your child's grandparents live up to the blessing that they have to offer. Thanks so much for writing in.
Okay, we have one more, and it too is from a mom. Her name is Denise, and she wrote, "Good afternoon, Dr. Hallowell. I have enjoyed your books and podcasts for many years now, as my husband and I are learning how to help our 13-year-old son with ADHD. My son has been under the care of a child/adolescent psychiatrist since he was 9 years old when he was started on Concerta. In the recent 12 months, my son is not liking his doctor. My son describes him as confrontational, and he feels like the doctor is trying to make him mad or put him down. I have a professional relationship with the doctor and have subtly brought up the fact that my son does not like coming to see him recently in hopes that things would improve, but they have not. I would very much like my son to have someone he likes to talk to and can connect with, a physician, therapist, or social worker. These teen years are hard, and I know my son is frustrated with his ADHD. I'm writing to see if you know of any child/adolescent psychiatrists or therapists in the Chicago area. With much gratitude for your work and positivity in the area of ADHD, warmly, Denise."
Well, Denise, it is very important that your son like his doctor. Everything will go better. The meds will work better. The interventions will work better. Your son will feel better about himself. And if he's come to a point where it's time to part ways with this doctor, doesn't mean the doctor is bad, just means the chemistry. People leave me because they don't like me. It happens to all of us. It doesn't mean we're bad doctors. It just, we can't be liked and appreciated by every single person who comes to see us. Just like, you can't like every food, or you can't like every movie you see. I mean, there's an element of chemistry in the doctor-patient relationship that you really need to respect. And the doctor won't take it personally. You can just say, if the doctor is being unpleasant to your son, your doctor probably doesn't like seeing him either. So if you leave him, he'll probably be relieved. He probably knows that their relationship has gone a little bit sour. And again, no bad guy here. It just happens in doctor-patient relationships. It happens in clergy-parishioner relationships. It happens with merchants. You have a merchant that you've always liked, and suddenly you're not getting along with the merchant or the plumber or the gas station person. This is, you have people that you're working well with, and then you're not. And rather than getting mad and pushing forward, move on. Fortunately, there are many doctors in the Chicago area. And plus your son will be relieved that you're listening to him, that you're understanding what he's saying, and just say, well, this doctor helped us for a while. Now we'll find another doctor who can meet you more on your terms and get along with. Now, I don't have a specific referral in Chicago, but I can tell you the best psychiatrist in the world, in my opinion, is the head of child psychiatry at Northwestern. And his name is John Walkup, like you walk up to a store. Walkup, John Walkup. Now, he won't have time to see your son himself, but his office, I'm sure, could give you a referral either within their department or somewhere. And just to have John Walkup's name in your book of names, he is an amazingly wonderful child psychiatrist. He's both an academic, but also just a wise, knowledgeable, commonsensical, down-to-earth human being. And since you're in Chicago, I would try calling his office and seeing if you can get a referral and explaining to your son you respect what he's saying and you're going to find him a new person, because it's important not just for medication, but for understanding this condition as he continues to grow and develop, and also that you have an ally in the doctor that you can turn to and trust. Like I say, I don't treat disabilities. I help people unwrap their gifts. And in order to have someone unwrap your son's gift, your son has to like that person and believe in that person and enjoy seeing that person and laugh together and, be silly or whatever your son's stock and trade is, So, and they're out there. You're in a big city like Chicago. There are plenty of clinicians. It's not easy to find. You have to do some legwork, make some phone calls, but I've given you a starting point. And good luck in unwrapping your son's gift. Well, thank you for sending in those emails. Please keep sending them in. Send it to connect@distractionpodcast.com. You can send us an email or record a voice memo. You can put a message on a carrier pigeon, but it's got to come to connect@distractionpodcast.com, and I don't think the carrier pigeon could get onto the internet. It's a sad thing that we don't have carrier pigeons anymore, or smoke signals, or any of those ways of communicating that we used to. I'm just saying that tongue-in-cheek. Of course, it's a wonderful thing. That's going to do it for today, unless you want to send me a smoke signal to the contrary. Thank you so much to all of you who wrote to us. Really, we rely on your messages. Please keep them coming. We really, it's the way we exist is because of you. And without you, we wouldn't exist. Remember to like Distraction on social media. We're trying to beef that up. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen so you never miss one of our lovely episodes. And please let us know how we could make them even better. Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our recording engineer and editor is Scott Persson, the wonderful Scott Persson. And our producer is the also wonderful, talented Sarah Guertin. I'm Dr. Ned Hallowell saying goodbye for now.